G'day there folks, my name's Connor, hope you're well. We're back with some more stories from Reddit, so make sure you hit like and subscribe, and also the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Alrighty, let's get right into it. Okay folks, this one was posted on True Off My Chest. It was written by a throwaway account, and it's titled, I need to confess to my wife that I let things get out of hand with another woman. My wife and I are long distance. She works abroad. I take care of our sons, 4 and 3, and do odd jobs. Originally we lived with her, but our kids ended up put in a dangerous situation, and I didn't want that to happen again. Quitting her job wasn't an option in her eyes, so I moved to our home country with the kids while she stayed. She visits us a few times a year. I moved in with close family friends. It was a hard and painful decision. I had a lot of resentment over my wife prioritizing her job over our family, but I love her. I couldn't imagine not being with her. I thought about divorce, but we decided to try to work things out. The other woman was my friend when we were little kids. After my mother died, I left my hometown and moved in with my dad and didn't see that friend, but I stayed connected with some other people from that town throughout my life, and when I moved back home with the kids, I started visiting my hometown more, to see my mum's grave and visit my old neighbours. When I met my old friend again, I was excited to see her, but I'm nostalgic for everything from my childhood. It started out innocent. I was just happy to have another connection to that part of my life. Anyway, she has a son too who is 6, and so we ended up taking our kids to the park together while we had a coffee and caught up. It was innocent, and I told my wife I'd reconnect with her, and my wife was fine with it. She jokingly asked if she should be jealous, but she didn't mean it. She trusted me, so I feel terrible. We met up a couple times a month from then on. I don't really know when it lost its innocence, but I realized I started becoming infatuated with her. We'd hung out every time we met up, and before we left, and I would feel so wistful when she would hug me. She would start talking about how her ex mistreated her and her son, and I felt so protective. She started making comments like, "My son is so good with yours, it's like they're brothers." And I talked to her about some of the stuff that bothered me about my relationship with my wife, and she sympathized. I realized that I enjoyed the attention, and I found myself entertaining fantasies that I was with her instead. I kept thinking about if I'd never met my wife and had instead moved back home and reconnected with my old friend, and we'd somehow had our same kids only with each other. We both could have been happy and been spared so much pain. If I'm trying to be objective, she's a much better match for me than my wife. She puts her kids first. She appreciates me for who I am. My wife does too, but I feel like me and the kids are always an afterthought for her. Even when she's home and spending time with us, she is always thinking about her job. My wife is a good person and she does good work, but her job traumatizes her, and she was already traumatized before she started it. She started doing her job to cope with her past, but she's also re-traumatizing herself over and over, and my kids and I pay the price. I'm not trying to justify my actions, I'm just trying to explain. My childhood friend was always complimenting me on my looks, how good of a dad I am, my physical strength. It's like she appreciated the unique things about me, and I feel like my wife loved me just because I was there for her, like she would have loved anyone who loved her, and I was just the only one who did. It wasn't always like that, but that's how it started to eventually feel, with my wife being so distracted by her job all the time. I didn't really notice it until I reconnected with my friend and noticed the contrast. I should not have let things get that far, I know, but at first it was just an occasional thought, and I just brushed it off as intrusive thoughts, and telling myself, yeah, everyone has inappropriate thoughts, but what matters is your actions. But I just let it go too far. In hindsight, some of our friendly banter was really more like flirting, and it was not appropriate. That's an action, not a thought. Anyway, today was a reality check. She said she wanted to talk to me about something serious without the kids there, so I let my other friend who I live with babysit, and I met up with her. And she basically confronted me with the fact that we obviously have feelings for each other and said I should leave my wife for her. But it was like immediately I realized the amount of bullcrap I was feeding myself and her. I instantly felt so bad. I didn't deny having feelings, but maybe I should have. She kept insisting I think it over, and when she saw how upset I was, she said she'd let me think it over and then left. I should have told her no, there is nothing to think over. I love my wife, and I'm not leaving her. But I didn't say anything. That in itself is weighing on me. I need to tell my wife, I know, I just don't even know where to begin. Next time she's coming home is October. I feel like this is the kind of thing to say face to face, but I don't want to wait that long, and I don't want her to come all this way to have a nice time and ruin it. I could leave the kids with my friends and go visit her, but on top of the money issues and logistical issues, even that thought makes me sick. I keep imagining her smiling and being delighted to see me, and then how devastated she's going to be when I tell her. I can't stop thinking about her face. I feel sick. I don't want to tell her at all and just never see my childhood friend again. I'm also mad at myself for letting my stupid fantasies ruin a relationship and a precious memory, but I know it would be wrong to keep seeing her and impossible to just be normal friends now. But I know honesty is the best policy. I owe it to her to be honest. I just don't know what to do. I feel so wrong and stupid. I don't want to tell my friends. I think one of them would be really angry at me for almost cheating, and the other might actually encourage me to leave my wife. I feel like I need someone to tell me what to do because I can't process. Geez, this is just tragic all round, isn't it? I mean, yeah, he's clearly gone too far with this woman, and that's not on. But at the same time, you can definitely understand his disillusionment regarding his wife. Let's go to the comments. First off, like you said, you need to break it off and stop seeing her. Next up, you need to do some serious thinking. Can this situation with your wife keep on as is? What is the long-term plan here? Long distance is clearly not working for you. You need to be honest with yourself about your needs. Then you need to see if you can find remote couples counselling that can work with you and your wife. Get yourself in there. You have a lot going on in your marriage that needs to be addressed, and it starts with you figuring out what you need. You definitely need to distance yourself and talk with your wife. However, I have a question regarding your wife. You say that her leaving her job is not an option. Why? Is it because she chooses not to leave, or is it because she's the primary earner? Also, are you working and supporting yourself and the kids, or is she supporting everyone? Dude, you are definitely emotionally cheating. Say it as it is and not got out of hand with another woman. Admitting it yourself and saying it as it is will help you. Okay, let's go straight to an update. A lot of people asked me for an update, which I will, but I have a couple of things to say first. First, I wanted to thank everyone who commented civilly, regardless of your opinion. I especially appreciated hearing from people who have been in a similar situation, or in a similar situation to another person I mentioned. I wasn't thinking very straight at the time, and I don't think I thanked everyone properly, but it was very kind of you to take the time to share your perspective. The other thing, I should have said something at the time, but a lot of people bashed my wife, and I didn't defend her as much as I should have. So I'm going to set the record straight now. First of all, people were saying she was cheating on me, but she would never ever do that. She is honest and loyal, and a much better person than I am. Second, people were saying my wife is negligent and doesn't care about me or the kids. This is also wrong. She's very loving. Yes, she is busy with her job, but she says she thinks about us every moment, and when she's home, she spends as much time with me and the kids as she can. She does get distracted and think about things at work that stress her out, but that's because she sees things that get to her. It's not because she doesn't care about us. She's not like half the parents out there that ignore their kids because they're distracted by their phone. People were also bashing me in a way that I think was kind of over the top. But honestly, you can bash me, but don't bash my wife. Me having problems in my relationship doesn't mean she deserves to be bashed. I actually showed the post to my best friend, and she pointed out that a lot of you were probably just being sexist. You attacked my wife and said she didn't care about me or our kids because she doesn't get to see us much. But my friend pointed out that there are a lot of jobs that mostly men do that mean they don't get to see the kids much, and no one says they don't love their kids and need to quit. So for everyone who says my wife doesn't love our kids, would you say the same to dads who are in the military, truck drivers, work on oil rigs? Would you say that they're all definitely cheating on their wives, or tell their wives that they should leave them? If not, you're being sexist. And for everyone who told me to get a better job so my wife can come home, would you say that to a woman who is married to a guy who does one of those jobs? For everyone saying me and my wife shouldn't be married or have kids because she's an aid worker, do you think there shouldn't be any aid workers? Or do you think no aid workers should be allowed to get married and have kids just because of their job? You realize a lot less people would be aid workers if it meant they couldn't have a family, right? You don't make any sense. Anyway, I saw my wife and told her everything, and we actually had a nice visit. She was glad to see me, in spite of everything, and she insisted I not tell her anything bad until after she showed me something, which was confusing to me, but I agreed. Anyway, it was a little waterfall, and it was beautiful. She said she visited the waterfall whenever she got a chance, and it reminded her of me, and she wished she could show it to me every time. I nearly cried when she said that. I almost couldn't even tell her after that, but I already told her I was going to tell her something bad, so I had to. Anyway, we sat by there for a while until she said she was ready to hear my bad news. So, as much as it killed me, I told her everything that happened. She tried to be calm and understanding, but I could tell she was hurt. I almost wished she would have yelled and slapped me, but she just thanked me for being honest. She asked what I was going to do. I said I wasn't going to stay in touch with my former friend either way, but I hoped she would forgive me and come home to us in October like she planned. She said I was already forgiven and asked me for more details about what exactly happened and my feelings, which I did my best to answer honestly. It was hard though. I could tell she was getting more and more upset. Eventually she just said, okay, and we walked back to her base without really talking at all. That night we talked more. She knows it's hard for me to live the way we do, and she just asked me again if I was sure I still wanted to be with her. I told her I knew she wasn't going to quit her job, but I talked about how one of the hardest things is that even when she comes home, her mind is on the job, and it's hard to see how sad and stressed she always is. She said she'd bring it up in therapy and try to work on being present in the moment with her family. She kept pressing me on if there was anything else she could do better besides quit her job, and I told her how I felt about how sometimes it seems like she only loves me because I love her, and I could be anyone. She cried, apologized, said it's not true, and told me as many specific things she could think of that she loves about me. I did the same for her. She said she was glad we talked and glad I was willing to keep working on our marriage, because from the beginning when I told her I had something bad to tell her in person, she just assumed I wanted a divorce. She said she's always worrying I'm going to leave her, but she's grateful for every day I don't. I promised her I don't plan to, and told her I worry the same things sometimes. It was a really good conversation. The other days, I went to her job site with her for a bit and helped out with a few things. The local kids were teasing my wife about me, which was adorable. Things aren't perfect, but they're going to be okay. Also, I know a lot of people said that my wife should leave me because what I did was as bad as a physical affair, and confusingly, a lot of people said I did nothing wrong. I think it's somewhere in between. I did something wrong, but I did stop it before it got that far. And a lot of other people said I should divorce my wife, but I'm not divorcing her. She has her flaws, but she's also one of the best people I know. All of her flaws are because she's been through things that I can't even imagine. I chose to love her in spite of the things she can't give me. I will always love her. I'm not someone who can stop loving someone. Even if we divorced, I'd think about her and wonder if she was okay every single day. I can't be in a relationship with another person even if I wanted to, because I'd never be over her. It wouldn't be fair to them. It's my wife or no one for me. Another few months later, Opie makes another post. Hi, this is sort of an update of my previous post in this sub. You can see them on my profile, the sub won't let me link them, but it's also a lot of other stuff to get off my chest. I made a post here a while ago. It was about how I realized I was in an emotional affair with my old friend while my wife was working in the Philippines. That issue is resolved. My wife forgave me, I haven't spoken to my old friend at all anymore, and I'm much more careful with my other female friends. However, some of the comments I got on my last post have still been weighing on me, and my wife is home now, and she had a lot of big news that I wanted to get off my chest. First, the good news is that my wife is pregnant again, and I'm happy about it in spite of everything. I know some people in my last post were asking if I was using protection to avoid bringing more kids into the world, and honestly, no, we didn't. And I didn't want to admit that for obvious reasons. I don't have any defense for that other than I'm stupid. The other major thing is that my wife probably has OCD. Basically, my wife realized she was late and probably pregnant a long time ago, but originally didn't tell me or take a pregnancy test. She said it was like there were two different people in her head, and part of her was screaming to go get things figured out, but the part of her that actually had control refused to do anything besides carry on as usual. She was too scared to take a pregnancy test and get proof that she was pregnant because she knew she wouldn't be allowed to go on her next assignment because of Zika virus. Basically, it was a lot of screaming at herself to do something about it before she finally got the courage to tell her therapist what was going on and actually take the pregnancy test. So even though she got pregnant in July, she hasn't had any kind of care or anything yet. Also, I guess she'd been hiding a lot of things from her therapist because she knew the therapist would make her take a break if she knew exactly what was going on in her head. So she wasn't honest with the therapist about how she felt compelled to do this job, how she felt when she wasn't doing it, etc. But she knew she needed to do right by her baby, so she finally told the therapist about the pregnancy, how she was having such a hard time doing anything about it, and then everything else came out. My wife described to me a bit more about how it feels to be in her head. It's not just that she thinks God wants her to do her job. The way she said it basically is she constantly thinks about all the bad things happening in the world, everything terrible that she's ever seen, every time she could have helped someone but didn't, even if she had a very good reason, and it makes her feel like she has to be working. She thought all these thoughts were God speaking to her, but she didn't tell the therapist that because she thought she wouldn't understand. She told me when she finally told the therapist, she basically asked her if she thought God was loving, and if so, why God would want her to constantly be thinking about things that made her miserable. That question finally made my wife open to accepting that she might have a mental illness rather than just having God talking to her. She is home now, a couple of weeks earlier than she was supposed to come, so she can get prenatal care ASAP and a more in-depth mental health assessment. I guess her therapist just thinks she has OCD but can't actually diagnose her or prescribe her medication or anything. I feel so bad for her, and like I failed too. I feel like I should have tried to dig with her more about what she was feeling. My wife was more open with me than the therapist about her thoughts, and I feel like I knew something was wrong, but I assumed she was telling the therapist everything too, and that the therapist was helping to the best of her ability. And as much as I'm happy that I hope this means things are going to be better now, I know my wife feels awful, and that makes me feel awful. Basically, she was really devout and religious growing up, but after some stuff happened to her, she kind of lost her faith, and felt like if God existed, he didn't approve of her. I met her around then, and she was definitely in a very dark place for a while. She says that when she started having her thoughts about how she could fix the world, it was really reassuring because she thought she was finally getting her faith back. So it's been pretty crushing for her to not have that feeling anymore. I'm hoping her therapist is able to help her with that as well. My wife doesn't trust religious leaders anymore, so that makes it a lot harder for her to have to go through that. I believe in God, but I don't believe the same things as my wife, and I'm less devout than her, so I don't always know what to say. I have told her I'm so sorry for what she's been going through, and that I'm so proud of her for finally going to her therapist for help, even though it was so hard. I told her I'm glad she was open with me, and I hope she knows she can rely on me for anything she needs. And I told her I'm sure God knows how hard it was for her to get help, and he's proud of her too. That made her cry, I think in a good way. Anyway, she's been home a few days now, and we're just taking things one day at a time. Prenatal appointments coming up next week, but we're still trying to figure out the OCD appointment stuff. So far, we've just been cherishing the family time as much as possible. The best news. My wife says when she's done with maternity leave, instead of going back to work, she might try to go back to school. She wants to get her master's and learn another language or two, and she says part of the reason for that is that she would have more choices in her assignments and possibly be able to work with refugees here in the US instead of travelling all over. That way we could find somewhere to live permanently as a family. She says she's not sure yet and she wants to spend some time figuring things out, but I am hopeful for the first time in a long time that we might be able to be happy together as a family someday. I'm really just hoping everything turns out positively. I feel bad for being happy since this was so hard on my wife, but I really hope it'll end up being a positive thing all around in the end. We've told my two closest friends who we live with about the new baby, but no one else yet, except Reddit strangers. My best friend is almost as excited as me. She keeps coming to me talking about gender reveal party ideas, like randomly in the middle of talking about the election or whatever. We're keeping it from the kids for just a while longer because she's not very far along yet, and if God forbid the baby doesn't make it, we don't want the kids to be upset. So I keep telling her to be a little more subtle, and she keeps forgetting, but luckily the kids have no idea what she's talking about when she does that. Anyway, that's my big news. Someone asked me for an update, and I wanted to clear the air and get some of this stuff off my chest anyway. Tracking nicely. Moving straight to another update almost half a year later. I've posted here before about a major mistake I made while my wife was abroad working as an aid worker. I've also posted about how we recently found out she has OCD. Her form of OCD was that she thought God was constantly talking to her, telling her to do things, and reminding her of all the bad things that were happening in the world. Anyway, since she found out she was pregnant, she's been getting treatment for it, and for a while, things were looking up. I don't mean to be selfish, but for a while I felt like I could have my old wife back. She really wasn't really like this when we first got together, but it wasn't just for my sake. I was hoping that with treatment, she'd be happier herself, and also be able to be there for our kids more. However, ever since Trump took office, my wife's mental health has taken a turn for the worse. She has always been completely devastated about Palestine, but when she was at her job was a distraction from it, and when she got home and didn't have the distraction, it was rough, but she was actively working on being able to cope. However, when Trump started cutting funding for aid programs, she found out that the organization she works for would be doing layoffs, and she might not have a job to go back to, and she completely lost it. Her co-workers were giving her updates from the ground. There were a lot of rumors. For a few days, she was basically just curled up in bed texting, reading the news and panicking. I didn't know how to support her during that time. Nothing I tried to do for her made a difference. She didn't want the kids to see her in that state, so she just kept telling me to go spend time with them. She left her room only once during that time to go to therapy, but then the day after that she left the house without telling me to go protest by herself by walking along the main road holding a sign. Luckily, she did tell my best friend where she was going, and my best friend went with her and texted me what was up. At first, I was just glad she was feeling well enough to get out of bed. However, now she does this more days a week than not. She spends more time doing this than she spends with our kids. I've gone with her a few times. My best friend goes with her a lot. Even if she wasn't protesting, I'd be worried about her walking on that road. People drive really fast and aren't expecting pedestrians. However, my other worry is that this is a very white and conservative area, and a lot of people have guns, and my wife not only is out there protesting things that most people here agree with, but she will actively shout at people who drive by with Trump stickers on their cars. There have been a few times when people will shout at her. A few people have pulled over to argue with her, and if that happens, she doesn't try to de-escalate or anything. She will scream back at them. She's asked a few times if our kids can come with her. I said no because I was afraid someone could hurt or threaten them, and she agreed not to take them. But when I mentioned that it would just be as horrible for our kids if they lost their mum and unborn brother because someone hurt her, she brushes it off. No one has done anything physical yet, but there are some psychos out there, and it only takes one. She has also stopped doing therapy, stopped doing the workbooks her therapist gave her, and won't take her medication and didn't get her prescription refilled. She says that she doesn't think there's anything wrong with her. There is something wrong with all the people out there who aren't protesting. I asked her if she doesn't want to get better and be able to be happy, and she says happiness isn't for her. Another thing is that this is affecting our relationships with our neighbours. We were already odd in this area. We're not white and my wife is Muslim. We sometimes get looks, and I felt like I've had to earn acceptance from the neighbours. People will almost never be directly rude to us, but if I say my wife is a Muslim, I can tell that what they hear is, my wife is a terrorist. If I said my wife is a liberal Muslim, that wouldn't go over much better. I've just kind of had to pretend I don't notice the reactions and keep being friendly until they decide my family is normal. I also try to find a way to casually mention that my late mother was white and grew up in this area. However, I can tell people are acting different around me now. A few people avoid me. Some have awkwardly been like, "So I saw your wife the other day." I haven't been getting as much gig work, and worst of all, one of my son's best friends is no longer allowed to come over to our house. They outright told me, "He can come over here, but I don't want him to go to your house anymore." It felt like such a slap in the face, since I've babysat that kid so many times, for free. Since Israel broke the ceasefire, it's been at its worst. She's been out there every day for hours. I feel so heartbroken for my kids, who don't understand, and for my wife, who is her own worst enemy. I can't force her to get help, but I have no idea what else to do. She's at least been keeping up with her prenatal appointments, and she's promised me that when our son is born she'll stop protesting. But I almost don't know if I believe her because it almost seems like she's not capable of that. How do I handle this? Opie answers a couple comments. In response to someone suggesting the wife might have schizophrenia and asking if she seemed like she was having conversations with an invisible person, he says, "No, she's never done that. I know what you're talking about. I see homeless people do that a lot, and my wife never does it." The therapist explained it better than I could. But basically, people with schizophrenia who think they hear God are actually hearing a voice in their head. But my wife doesn't hear a voice. She has obsessive thoughts about bad things happening in the world and feels like she has to fix it. This started happening to her suddenly, and her own explanation for it was that it was a message from God, because she didn't know any other explanation. But she doesn't actually hear a voice saying, "Opie's wife, I want you to go protest on the street." And when people say he should be more supportive of his wife's protests, he says, "I'm not trying to be flippant. I didn't want to make my post too long, and I figured it should go without saying that obviously what is happening in Palestine is horrific. I know it triggers my wife because of things she experienced in her own childhood and things her family has experienced. I'm not saying she shouldn't protest at all, but I wish she wouldn't do it in such a dangerous way and risk her own safety and the safety of our unborn son. I want her to be able to be happy and go to therapy so she can find a healthy way to deal with her emotions. Her emotions are totally valid, but the way she's dealing with it doesn't help her. She is a good person, and I love her so much. I really hope it doesn't lead to violence, but even without violence, it's not a good road, and I'd be worried someone could hit her accidentally. There are almost no pedestrians there, and she doesn't just stay in one spot. She walks and crosses a lot of areas that a lot of cars are coming in and out of with no street lights. I also wish she would only hold a sign and not scream at people, because she might scream at the wrong person who would be crazy enough to attack her." And now for another update, and the final one so far. I got like 15 people asking if my family is okay, and several a-holes telling me to leave my wife. My baby son is safe and healthy. My wife is doing better. She had a healthy birth, but she developed postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. She told her therapist she was worried she wouldn't be able to take care of the baby and would harm him. The therapist recommended she check herself into a mental hospital, and she did. At the hospital, they said her risk of actually hurting the baby is low, and they were just intrusive thoughts, and put her back on medication to manage them. She was only there for 3 days. She says she still feels pretty depressed and angry about what's happening, but she is a little more functional now. She's been back in therapy, doing an online support group, and taking her medication. She promised she wouldn't stop taking it again without talking to me and her therapist first. She's been crocheting baby beanies to donate and doing a postnatal yoga video since her therapist recommended she do something physical to stay grounded. She hasn't protested since our son was born, but she does mostly wear protest shirts and has gotten in 2 public arguments about them. I'm not going to ask her not to do that, because both times it was the other person that started the argument, and my wife is right. Me or one of my friends usually goes with her when we leave the house, just in case anything happens. My wife officially lost her job, and she's pretty devastated, but she knew it was coming. We don't know what we're going to do from here on out, but we're just trying to enjoy this family time for now. Playing board games, watching cartoons, and reading books. Our oldest just started kindergarten. One thing that makes me happy is that my wife has been speaking to the baby in Somali and teaching our older kids some Somali and Arabic songs. Somali is her native language, but she never spoke it to our older kids before. I am never going to leave my wife. You can't leave your loved one just because they get sick. And mental illness is a real illness, just like cancer or diabetes. For the person who told me to leave her and get with my childhood friend, that would be horrible, and I would never do that. And I've hardly even thought about that girl for months. Wow, there you go, guys, and that's the end of that story. Yeah, I've got to say, I hadn't thought about that girl since the start of the story as well. So much has happened since then that I kind of forgot where we started. Let's read some final comments to wrap this one up. For those unfamiliar, this sounds like moral OCD. Wife has constant intrusive thoughts about how bad the world is and how she's a bad person because there's bad stuff happening. Compulsively protesting and going on intense aid contracts alleviate the anxiety somewhat, but never totally. Really unfortunate that she's unwilling to go back to treatment. It's a real tough one to convince people to get help for. That is not the post I was expecting from the title. I really hope she's able to get help. Things haven't gotten better politically since April. Commenters supporting the wife's protesting clearly do not understand intrusive thoughts and OCD. This woman needs help, serious psychological help, to understand that she cannot fix the world by doing enough good deeds. OCD is a messed up condition, and it's not helpful when people misconstrue her good deed doing as something positive rather than a compulsive belief that she has to keep doing these things because if she stops, something even worse will happen. It's so sad that she's stopped therapy and medication. Oh yikes, this family has problems well above Reddit's pay grade, and the OP is taking a lot of personal responsibilities for the things going wrong when his wife's mental health conditions and her behaviour around them are seriously damaging the household. Yeah, I think that puts it into better words than I could have said. Anyway guys, as always, I'm going to throw it to you. What are your thoughts about this? Plenty to say, I'm sure. Otherwise, that's it from me today. Hope you enjoyed that story. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.